I have an idea. Let's talk about the mirror shield. Ah yes, magnificent! Welcome back again, my friends, for the final installment in the Sigvald series. I apologize if my voice sounds a little strange. Not only am I trapped inside of a mirror, but my microphone seems to have decided to end its own life. Overnight, mystery to me as all technology is, it has decided to burn itself out of existence. At any rate, we are talking about the reflective surface that Sigvald carries across the battlefield. This was a lot of fun because it was something completely new and completely different. I have never ever painted a mirrored surface before. I have a few afterthoughts that I'll share after the process, but until that time comes, let's get on with the paintworks. The mirror shield. In my last video, it was my grand idea to have it reflecting a burning castle, or, just a stronghold of some kind. You can see here that I just have a very loose shape laid out. If you recall back to my video, Sigvald, the ugly phase, got some things plotted out. So I'm just enhancing that. It was a very rough rendering. As you can see, it's stayed exactly the same since that video. So right now I'm just going in and just adding more saturation to those initial tones. I have a little bit of blue, a little bit of yellow. I'm adding amounts of white into the blue. Just brighten things up. Try to get a cloud in here. Have it kind of floating behind this burning castle. But mostly I want the sky to be open just so it can contrast nicely with the dark silhouette of this castle outline. And I want that orange smoke and flame to really jump out at the viewer. So we'll just gradually bring things up and pull our punches. And in my mind, I'm pulling the yellow ingredient from the bit of sun that's shining down on the battlefield. It's still daytime during this fight, but night is always just around the corner. And also try to ignore the gold trim. Obviously I have to paint that in after the reflection is laid in place, so I'm not going to pay it much mind if I paint over it. No big deal. Working from the inside out. I'll cover my mistakes at a later step. Bring a little bit of exile blue in, down low. I'm not really doing much intense blending. I'm pretty much just pushing paint around. I'm taking very small amounts so it's controllable. Just like that. Kind of running out of paint, it becomes glaze-like consistency as I work. And I want the base of the castle to kind of disappear back into the shimmering shield here, so I'm going to blend it up to a nice light blue. Try to cause, carry a reflection on the surface of the mirror, kind of mimicking maybe a beam of light that's bent across. So not necessarily a reflection of the image it's faced at, but just an errant kind of beam of light. I guess giving it kind of a crystal ball sort of look. Okay, we'll take a little bit more of that blue and yellow mixture. Don't need to spend too much time on this side because I plan on it being mostly covered in smoke and flame. But I'm just making my way around the shield. So also off to the side I have some magenta and some purple. I think we'll combine the two. Maybe a little bit of white. Let's see if a kind of ominous purple cloud. Assume that the presence of Slaanesh is sort of tilting the universe a little bit in the chosen colors of that god's direction. Yeah, something like that. There's a lot of things happening in the sky, so no one can really tell you you're wrong. Let's just make it look cool. What would Frank Frazetta do? Definitely take this chance to add a nice splash of a vibrant color traveling through the sky. And anything is possible on an alien atmosphere. I like that. I'll take a little bit of Exile Blue again, dab it more towards the bottom of the cloud, make it look just a little bit heavier, grab some magenta, sort of stipple it along and together. I think I'm picking up more than I'm putting down. Let's add a little more of that magenta. There's a lot of active paint right now, so it might be a good point to just set it down for a minute, let everything dry. Usually jumping place to place, so it doesn't matter much. Let's live dangerously though. Take a little bit of the white, add that back in. Maybe have this cloud climb up a little bit. Just like so. Just like Slaanesh. Kind of beautiful, kind of maybe a little scary. The scary part will come in when the flames are in place. Just getting there. It's very important when you're working, especially on something like this that's more of a landscape. You want to work back to front. Make sure that you have your kind of smoky, misty background in place before you start placing hard objects on top of it. I made that mistake enough times to know better now. Tend to get focused on the foreground and then kind of get a tunnel vision on that main element, and then end up having to kind of painfully paint around it as I finish off the background. Just a little more magenta. And I'm pulling a castle wall up here as well. So we'll kind of just build up the backdrop. Okay, giving it a short moment to dry. Let's pull a little bit of yellow up here behind the clouds. Such a thin layer that's that greenish tone, the yellow and blue mixed together. Still turns up. I'm just trying to make something a little fantastical. You can see it's very touch and go. There aren't many rules here. Just a little more depth into this cloud. Break up that line. Looks a little too straight across and not quite vibrant enough. Alright, pretty good. I'll just drag a few arches of white stippled in here, just adding a little bit of dimension to the cloud so it doesn't look entirely flat. I'm going to add just a little more kind of distance by lightly dropping some of these shadow tones from the cloud. And at the back here, just breaking things up. There's really not anything massively detailed going on here, but you see the effect, you know, just Also, staring at the sky can be a lovely inspiration. And now just a little bit of white and yellow right up top. Just kind of pushing the distance. You can always go it's a little bit brighter in these upper areas. Maybe the sun is hiding back there. Maybe there's weird kind of glints happening on the surface because of the overall shape of the shield. A bit of an outline right around. Taking just the smallest amount of yellow and including it with that white and blue mixture. Just seems a little more natural that way. The sky is alright, let's be sure that this design is carried all the way to that golden frame, right up to that edge. And again, just accenting the shape of the object. A little bit of a highlight on this lower edge. Smooth that progression out. Drop a little bit deeper in color. Tend to the mid-tone. It doesn't have to be great because this is going to change. You're probably looking at it like, what? Trust me, this is just the foundational layer. And also it is a little confusing with that design now kind of being submerged into the scenery. So just look at this as the background. Okay, with that background in place, who knows, we might come back to it and give it another little touch. Let's start carving the silhouette of that castle back out and define it a little bit further. So I have some orange and black combined. That will give me brown. And seeing as I'm imagining the castle as black and being on fire somehow, you know, there's a lot of wooden structure inside of the bricks, whatever. I haven't thought that deeply, but so gradually just taking black, mixing orange into it to brighten it up till eventually it will turn the color flames. That is my theory behind this. So it will just be many varying mixtures of black and orange for the most part. So let's get that main tower carved out and then commence the crenellations. I'm going to give it that very distinctive castle tower look. So we'll have this toothy pattern running across the top. Not bad. I want the silhouette to really have an impact and be recognizable on this small shape. Let's pull a little bit more of that groundwork down low, fading into that angular reflection. And maybe just some random, more faint silhouettes of other structures here. I'll just draw the real quick rooftop. This also does not have to be perfect because generally I want to have a lot of flame pulling across it, so let's say it's kind of coming in here, and it's all the flame is drifting to the east. Again, I guess it doesn't really matter if I paint around these bits of filigree and gems, but yeah, generally this whole side of the shield will be reflecting this massive blaze as Sigvald is striding forward with that malicious grin on his face. Alright, let's get the silhouette of a window in there. A little impression of a window, I should say. Flame trailing out the top of it. Do another one down here. Let's make sure it's this orange layer is nice and saturated. Let's take a little bit of that black and orange mixture and start pulling that into play. You know, as this fire rises and turns into smoke, just get kind of a rough pass laid down. I still have darker to go. I can pull in some black. I still have yellow available, so I can make things even brighter. But you see now why this area didn't have to be painted so well. Just be covered up anyways. So pulling your punches, kind of painting loosely in the beginning so you don't dedicate too much time to a detail or a feature that you end up not wanting. Well, that's how you get it done. Right, just blend it in a little bit, stippling to create impression of some embers. Just go and place some harder, very small dots, undiluted paint. We have a few drifting up over this placid blue backdrop. There we go. Okay, now let's pull a little bit of yellow and orange together, just brightening things up. As I get closer to this castle tower, just brightening that blaze, again with a few embers kind of floating up and into the smoke. Just make sure to, you can jump back to orange as well, you can bounce between all of these colors. Just be sparing with this yellow, and as you brighten up, you don't want to defy the scale by making these areas too large. And you're also kind of trying to work with this level of distance. I don't want to completely cover the previous layers. Kind of, it's just like highlighting, but here we are, unbridled and unchained, like a beast in the field, free to paint wherever we choose. But the same rules apply, you know, just less is more. Be very sparing. You can always add more paint to the surface. So just work very patiently, very gradually. And eventually pulling a little more white into that yellow and orange mixture. I want to make sure to lay this down in a few coats so you get a nice saturated version of these colors. Acrylics can dull down a little bit if you just lay a single coat, so even though it may look complete and look fine, be sure to come back and add some of those safety layers just to be sure. I'll take just a little bit more black into the mixture. I'll lick my brush so it's more of a blending nub. Barely applying any paint, but just wherever some of these, you may see some channels of smoke happening, I want to darken them up towards the top. And in some of the areas that are less exposed to the flame, right down here. Just add a little bit of texture and depth. And it's a tiny flaming castle. Let's let this, I'm just going to, before I work it to death, I'm going to take a small break and set it down. You won't even notice. I'll just click off the camera. I want to let everything sit and settle, just for the reasons I was speaking about saturation and having this tonal purity. I may want to adjust some things. I may want to bring everything up. I might want to brighten up some of the colors along the edge of this castle, just to make it stick out a little bit further. But I'm putting this down, letting it dry, and coming back to it with a fresh set of eyes. It doesn't have to be done in a rush. I'll take a little break. Oh, psych, one more step. Also, in order to make this look more like a reflection, I don't want it to look like it's been painted on the surface. I want this to look like a reflective surface. I'm finding that this little bit of an outline around the baubles, around the kind of inner lip of the shield, is really helping add to that reflective quality, getting the look that I'm after. As I stopped filming, I realized I wasn't done. I started to paint even more. This is a really fun thing to try to pull off. Definitely not a common ground for me, something I haven't done before, but mimicking this reflection. And I can see tracing some of these lines around all of these shapes. Something like this around the filigree that's resting on top of the surface, because it would cause a little bit of an interaction, a bit of a light interruption. So we'll carry those surface level reflections, and I think glare is the word that I've been looking for this whole time. I'm going to add a lot more of this glare and just outline some of these details that are laying on top of the mirror. And snap. Got that non-metallic metal filled in, brought things up to the same level as the model, and I'm just laying in some final reflective lines here and there, black lining next to these metallic overlays. And the more of these white reflections that I add, I think the better it comes across as being a mirror, but also I don't want to cover up the freehand, so I'll just continue to lay these very thin white lines in place, just sketching around this golden overlay. Built this up in a few layers, brighter and whiter. I figure the more it is going to sell as being reflective. So I want to patiently build up those thin white lines, and then here and there I'm just going to drag. I make sure all of these diagonal lines stay parallel with one another. Very lightly drag this reflective overlay. Don't want to disguise this castle too much, but I like the way this effect is looking. And we'll kind of put a second line mimicking the angle where these little gems are laid in. think we'll do the same just to get that rounded look. Just like so on the center of the shield. There, I don't mind if this design is disguised a little bit. It's okay to be kind of confusing. Honestly, these overlays help, I think they help blend the surfaces together a little bit more. It doesn't look like there's just a painting on the shield. But yeah, this is giving me a really fun chance here to try something new. Now let's mix up, take my blue and yellow mixture so I get this kind of limey green, touch of white into that. It has these reflective lines trail off, it'll lose a bit of their brightness. Kind of turning back to the color of the general atmosphere. Again, I don't want things to be too crowded. But you can see the effect. It's making this, you can see it's making the transition to these white lines a lot more gradual. And finally, we'll just round off this upper area. Right in this little silhouette here, place a small white dot. Magnificent. Here I've attached the shield. It's a mirror shield. When I'm holding it at this angle, everything looks fine. But when I hold the model more of an upright fashion, I can see clearly a very hard shadow being cast over the shield, so I want to paint that in place. Sometimes you run into these little forks in the road when you paint pieces separately on a model, but it won't take much time to get this looking just right. And since I have this little silhouette, this little glowing orb up here, I'll try to cover about half of that up so it's just peeking out. So I have my turquoise mixture, just a little bit of exile blue. That would be the beginning. But mainly we'll just have this shadow catching, a nice little drop shadow. I'm just moving about this in a very kind of gradual, careful way. Don't want to go too far and just paint a black line right onto the shield, but it'll add a little more black to the mixture. Bring this into play. Sweep it towards this outer edge. Decent. Just leave it semi-transparent. Some of that original shape still showing through. Decent. That works almost well enough for me. Just give it one more pass. And I'll just lightly glaze the same color. I want to continue the shadow across these non-metallic metal areas. Adding the slightest hint. Just looks kind of wrong if that shadow just drops off. Now we'll take some of this brighter turquoise, just run an edge highlight across the top of the shield. A little more shadow tone. That edge highlight was a little too thick for my taste. Do it one more time. Bring a little bit of white into that. You barely even notice it's there. Looks very natural. I'm happy with that. Oh ho ho, I was free the whole time. You think a fucking mirror can stop me? A chain! Thank you for tuning into this tutorial. When I look back, in hindsight, there are things I would change. I am happy with the result, but it does not look as realistic as I imagined it in my mind. It came out a little more on the animated toon side. I think this is because a lot of the details are too sharp. I should have blurred things a little bit more. I should have added more atmospheric depth, you know, more interaction as things travel further away from your eye. They are submerged in the atmosphere and can kind of disappear at times, or the silhouette can kind of fade into more of a blue fog in the case of this mirror. But it was fun, and a true piece of artwork, dare I call it that, is never completed, it is only abandoned. If you'd pose the same question to other artists throughout time, they would probably say the same thing. There's always some small correction to be made, or a little point of focus, or maybe you'd like to add a single tree to the background of the Mona Lisa. So it is important to just complete projects, go forward, look back in hindsight, of course, learn from that, but don't get rid of it, and see it through and just finish the project. Personally, I'd like to hunt down another model with a mirror, maybe reflecting its own visage, like I've been doing with my dirty mirror here. But it gives me a lot of ideas, and this is my first attempt. And what do we say around here? First time, that's your first try. Do it 10 times, it should be 9 times better than the first. So 100 mirrors later, I will be a master. Thank you for your support. Feel free to log questions in the comment section below. Let me know how you feel about old Sigvald. So as you walk out your front door into this gray, boring world that we all dwell upon, just a thin layer hovering above the crust, remember, everything is better when it's been painted. And let's paint the world.